Hello folks, today I'm going to be looking at the titanium Flux 125 flux core welder from Harbor Freight. The titanium welders are kind of their newest line of welders, and they fall somewhere kind of in between the Chicago Electric welders and the Vulcan welders, which are kind of at the top of the range that they sell. Now I think overall they kind of have more in common with the Chicago Electric welders, but the big difference being that it is an inverter design welder versus the old 90 amp and 125 amp flux core wire feed welders, which were the transformer design. The one big benefit that inverter design does bring with it is that this is a DC output welder. I've done several videos with the 125 amp Chicago Electric flux core welder, and that is an AC output welder, which really limits the capability with flux core, which runs a lot better on DC. So that should be the main and the biggest benefit of the newer titanium series versus the older one, is just the DC versus AC output. The inverter technology itself brings with it another advantage of just size and weight. This welder, actually the whole box it came in was about the size of the old 125 amp transformer flux core welder from Harbor Freight. So the welder itself is quite a bit smaller, quite a bit lighter, so it's a lot more portable, easier to carry around the shop, easier to throw in the back seat of a car or the trunk or something if you wanted to take it somewhere to do some welding, in a remote location. So portability is a big plus. One downside of the small size, however, just something to be aware of, it does only fit the smaller 4-inch spools, so you can't fit the larger, like 10-pound spools in this machine. So if you wanted to run the bigger spools, they will not fit in this welder. Another real small change, but one that I really appreciate, is the fact that not only is the power cord quite a bit longer than it was before, it's actually very nearly 8 feet, but it also comes off the back of the welder. So that means that you can have this welder quite a lot further from the outlet, so you're a little bit less likely to have to use an extension cord, to get the welder close enough to your work to get a job done. It's also quite a bit more adjustable than the old one, whereas the old one had a fully adjustable wire feed speed. This one also has a fully adjustable voltage setting as well. Now some stuff is pretty much identical to the Chicago Electric 90 and 125 amp flux core welders. The wire feed drive system is identical to those welders. The work clamp and actually the work cable are the same. And this setup here is virtually identical as well. The main difference is that instead of coming with the, like the large nozzle that you would use on a MIG setup, this one actually comes with just the standard little plastic protector cap, which is all you need for flux core because you don't need a nozzle for the shielding gas. So it's kind of nice that it comes with that, rather than the bulkier nozzle that you don't really need. And what's also nice is it actually comes with 2 spare of those protective covers as well. So if you burn one of these up or melt it or something, you do have replacements. The fact that it comes with 2 means that you probably never have to buy an extra. It also comes with 2 contact tips, and both are sized for 030 wire. So that's what I'm going to be running in it today, just because that's the contact tips that it comes with. I have other contact tips for 035 wire, but it comes with setup for 030, so that's what I'm going to run. And like I said, and as you can see, it's got the same drive setup and the same spool system, but it's just in a smaller package, so you can only fit the smaller spools. And just like those other welders, it does come with a drive roll that is sized for both 030 or 035 wire. And it's very easy to change as well. It also comes with a strap, which I probably won't use, but if you wanted a shoulder strap or just some kind of a carrying strap on the top, it does come with a strap you can use for that. One thing to note about this welder, it does not come with the longer 1-year warranty like the Vulcan series does. It is just the standard 90-day warranty like a lot of other Harbor Freight products. And as you might expect, inside the cover here you just have just some simple instructions as well as a chart for getting your settings dialed in. So let me get this thing fired up. I'm going to do a little bit of welding with it. I'm going to cut and etch a couple of joints, and we'll see how this thing does. Here's a 3/16 T-joint that I welded up and then cut and etched. On this side, I had the welder essentially maxed out, and on this side, I had it turned down just a little bit. And you can see both of them actually have a nice flat bead profile, and both of them have good penetration. There's no just like flat spots with lack of tie-in. The weld isn't just sitting on top. There's no, severe crowning at the toes. Nice flat welds. The one that was run hotter, a little bit larger weld, but both of them actually have good penetration, good tie-in. I don't have any problem with either of those welds. Once again, this is 3/16 material. Alright, so I've done some welding with it, but real quick before I get into that, I just want to show something I forgot about. Right inside here, there's a little switch, and that is what they call a cold wire feed switch. And what that does is after you change wire spools, rather than having to use this to slowly feed it all the way through, you don't have to adjust your settings or anything. You just push that switch and the wire feed is going to run at maximum speed without actually energizing the contact tip. So you're not making the wire live, you're just feeding the wire through at full speed to get that wire set up quick. So that's a nice convenient little feature, that cold wire feed switch. Forgot to point that out when you were looking over the machine. Just want to make sure you knew it had that. Now, I didn't get a ton of welding footage with it, just because I had a lot of other stuff going on, and I was having some issues with my neutral density filter that I used to get the arc shots. But I did do a fair amount of welding with it on several different thicknesses of material, and it works great. Maxed out, this thing has a decent amount of power, runs plenty hot on 3/16" material, and turned down, it still runs smooth. It's easy to dial in a setting to where it just runs great even on really thin material. Here's just a little piece of 16th material that I welded up with that welder. And it was as easy as just turning the machine down and running a bead on it, and it ran great. I also did some repair work that I've been wanting to do, and I went ahead and did that with this welder just for testing it out. And that was actually repairing some braces on a piece of furniture that use very, very thin walled material. They're like maybe 3/4 to 1 inch square tubes, and the wall thickness is actually probably like 0.8 millimeters. So like half of this material. And with this machine turned all the way down, it was no problem. Granted, I couldn't just run one continuous long bead all the way around, because eventually the heat would build up and it would start to burn through pretty bad. But just short little stitch welds, and this thing worked great. In fact, in comparison to the Century FC90 flux core welder that I reviewed previously, I found that this one ran smoother when turned way down, or at least it was easier to get set to run smooth. I mean, I just set it at the low settings according to the door chart here, and it just was running great. And like I said, even on 3/16 material, it lays down a nice smooth flat bead, and it seems to burn in real nice. And as I showed on the cut and etch testing, it gets decent penetration on 3/16 material. So this thing certainly doesn't lack power in terms of being a 120 volt welder. So again, going back to the Century FC90, I would say the Titanium 125 has more power at the top end and runs a little bit nicer at the very bottom end. And considering that the price of the FC90 recently increased, and the normal price of the Titanium 125 is actually the same as the FC90, and with the sales, the Titanium Flux 125 is sometimes less expensive than the FC90. I would say if you're trying to decide between the two, the Titanium, at least for me, for my use, would definitely be a no-brainer. If you're trying to decide between this welder and the older Chicago Electric 125 amp flux core welder with the the transformer-based design, I will say that I definitely think the increased cost for this welder is worth it. It hasn't been around nearly as long, and it is a inverter design, so it's hard to say just how well this one will hold up in comparison to the older model. The older transformer designs have shown themselves to be pretty robust, and I think they have a decent reputation for longevity. This one, it's hard to say for sure how well it'll hold up, but assuming it does hold up okay, I would say this one is definitely worth the extra cost. It is DC output, it has more power, it runs a lot smoother turned down. You can get far more penetration on thicker material. The power cord is longer, it comes out of the back, and it has a lot more fine-tune adjustability to it. So I think if you're looking to upgrade from one of the Chicago Electric AC output flux core welders or something similar to it, I think this could be an excellent option. And also, if you're just in the market for a first welder or just, a very inexpensive flux core welder to have around the house, again, great option. If I had to point to a negative, I would just say that, once again, the reliability of this I don't think is really proven yet. They just haven't been around long enough to have, a track record one way or another. And the cooling fan on it is kind of high-pitched. I don't think it's any louder than the older Chicago Electric welders, but it does have a tiny bit more of a high-pitched whine to it. But that's a pretty nitpicky thing, and like the fan on just about any welder, I've found that personally for me, after it's on for a few minutes and I get involved in a project, I pretty much forget it's there anyways. So that's it. Fairly short review. Not a whole lot to talk about because this is a very simple welder. Not a lot to it, so there's not a lot to talk about. So if you have any questions, go ahead and post them up and I'll answer if I can. As always, thank you for watching. Take care.